build it and they will come. The product will sell itself. We're building something special. 3 months later, I realized in that moment that no, it doesn't really sell itself.
This week we're joined by Jack Thomas, owner of Base Bangkok and the co-creator of The Fit Guide. Now this is an awesome episode. We're going to split it into two parts. The first is on how Jack has built Base Bangkok, has built multiple locations and runs a team of over 40 and delivers a 5-star service. We hope you enjoy the episode.
I'd rather just get like a no, it's not right for me, which is fine, rather than like, I'll think about it.
They're scrolling on social media and then you call them 3 days later. There's a lot of other stuff that they've just seen and consumed between that time.
If you can catch them then, maybe you can change their life.
Only 7% of businesses will follow up with inquiries within the first 5 minutes.
You can't run a successful business, you can't grow a business thinking the product will sell itself.
So if you want to make more sales or actually even get ahead of your competition, just...
This episode is brought to you by Stride DNA, the DNA testing service that helps coaches, PTs, and gym owners take their client programming to the next level. Ever wondered why some clients thrive on certain workouts while others burn out? It all comes down to genetics. Stride DNA gives you science-backed insights into how your clients respond to training, recover, and process nutrients, so you can tailor workouts, refine diets, and optimize recovery for faster results. It's not just game-changing for clients, it's an easy additional revenue stream for your business. Offer DNA-driven coaching as part of a premium package or earn commission on test kits. It's quick, simple, and Stride gives you all the tools and education you need. The best part, it's quick and easy. Your clients take a swab, send it off, and in days, you'll be able to implement the change they need to thrive in their fitness journey. So if you want to future-proof your coaching, get real results, and boost your revenue, visit getstride.com today.
Jack, welcome to the Fitness Marketing Agency podcast. I actually think you now hold the record for, a person who's traveled the longest way and come on the podcast. Now, it's not directly here. We've just come from Performex,
yep.
But you are probably the guest that lives the furthest away. So, welcome to the podcast.
Nice.
How are you doing?
Yeah, very well. I had a few good days at Performex, of course, and really happy to be here.
Amazing. And I'm really looking forward to this episode because this is going to be very data driven. And at FMA we love the data, but we mostly have data on marketing and sales, and where your perspective will mainly come from is going to be from that point of entry from a consumer. Now, of course, you have the process before, but that's where we're going to mainly focus and really dive into the data of the customer experience and what you have to do to be in that top bracket of gym owner or fitness business. So, but before we do that, it'd be great if you could just give me a little bit of for those that don't know who you are, a little bit of an intro about yourself, entry to the fitness industry, your gyms, and also the Fit Guide as well, and we'll dive into it all.
Yeah, I'll make it a couple of minutes. I'll make it quick, but just dig in if you want to. So I'm from Bristol in the UK. I had a corporate job when I was 20 years old and absolutely hated it, working for one of the big 4 banks. Went on holiday to Thailand, absolutely loved it, and thought I need to give up my corporate job. So started saving up, got a bar job, was doing 2 jobs, saved as much money as I could, went to Thailand traveling, and then decided to stay for a little bit. So I was teaching English with no plans on really staying very long. Then I started a clothing export business, and this would have been 2003. So quite a long time ago. I was in my early 20s, and that went really well for a few years. And it kind of sparked this entrepreneurial thing in me. It went well for about 5 or 6 years, and then 2008, 2009, as the global economy crashed, the pound lost a lot of value and the business became difficult for a few years. So I was really at a crossroads about 2010, didn't know what to do, was training at a gym in Bangkok, which was kind of this American brand. It was like the first sort of Western style chain gym, and just the standards quite clearly weren't very good. And so I'd always been into fitness. I'd helped a few friends kind of start strength training programs, had done a few half marathons, and thought, I think I'd like the fitness industry. I think I'd enjoy it. I think I could be quite good at it. So came back to the UK, did my qualifications in 2011, and then went back to Bangkok in a very immature fitness market. Started working for a really cool small studio, was doing personal training in the studio, was doing park boot camps at 6 a.m., running around the city on a motorbike, doing PT sessions, and just really soaking up as much as I could about the industry, which really kind of set me up for the next stage, which was fitness manager. So a year later, we opened up a new studio, And it was really the first sort of boutique style gym in Bangkok. We were charging sort of similar to Western rates. It looked really Instagrammable. Instagram was just becoming a big thing then, and that kind of helped us grow. And when we set up this new gym called The Lab, it kind of exploded in popularity. I became fitness manager, so started learning about hiring coaches, training coaches, looking deeper into the business, and was in that position for 4 years. And just tried to learn as much as I could about running a gym and sort of running a team of coaches. 2016, I set up Base. So I left The Lab, set up Base. We had a really difficult first 6 months, which I talk about quite a lot publicly because I didn't really prepare as well as I should have done as a gym owner. I thought I was kind of ready because I'd managed a gym, but I'd never actually set up a gym, started a brand, trained a team, written systems and processes. So I talk a lot publicly about how difficult that first 6 months was, and realizing that, damn, I need to learn about sales, marketing, systems, all of these things. And that really sent me on a journey of almost becoming obsessed with the things that I wasn't doing very well. So things started getting better after 6 months. I started focusing on the important things. We opened up our second location a year into that, our third location a year afterwards. So we had 3 gyms running in Bangkok. Then obviously you had 2020 and everything that happened with that, but we still have 3 gyms now. Those are going well. And it was a few years ago that we started the Fit Guide. And so that came about as a chance conversation with a good friend of mine who was working in hospitality. So he worked for Forbes Travel Guide. So they started the 5-star, 4-star hotel review system. This was 2022, so the skies had just opened up. He'd just flown back to Bangkok. We were having a few beers and just talking about our respective industries. And he was telling me and showing me the process that he went through with hotels, mainly hotels, but also restaurants and spas. And when I looked at the kind of things that he looked for, say a Ritz-Carlton or a St. Regis, I was thinking, this is the stuff that we need to be doing in the fitness industry. And as someone who traveled and went to gyms around the world, not only did I know we needed to be doing it, I knew that we weren't really doing it very often. And we kind of jokingly, half jokingly said, let's set something up, kind of like the Michelin Guide for restaurants or Forbes Travel Guide for hotels, but for the world's best gyms. We woke up the next day and we were like, actually, that's a pretty good idea. Let's do it. So that set in motion, the Fit Guide. So it was about 12 months building the process, doing tons of test runs, bringing in people from hospitality, bringing in people in fitness, running it by the gym owners to make sure that they felt it fairly represented what a 5-star experience should be. Once we'd settled on the process, we went in anonymously, just like the Michelin Guide do, to New York, London, Singapore, Sydney, Dubai, 250 gyms in total. 100,000 data points, which is now 150,000 now that we're going into our second year. We're launching LA and Miami. So the really exciting part about that has been the conversations we've had with gym owners, the things that we've seen, the data that we've managed to collect, the conversations that's managed to start. And you've had a look through the report, I know, before we spoke today. So
it's an extensive report, over 200 pages of quality information. And just quickly, where can people find this report if they want to? So we're going to dive into a lot of the data, and there's some things that I have noticed in particular going through it that I want to talk about in particular. But where can people find this guide if they do want to check it out for themselves?
Just thefitguide.com. You can fill in your email address there and we'll send it through to you. The whole report that you've seen, all of our stats and data from the first year.
Perfect. And that story is incredible, and I've got loads of notes, but I've also got loads of questions from that
Sure.
story. So you mentioned that, first one, you mentioned that it was a very kind of immature industry when you went to Thailand back then. How much has it evolved within that time span?
Massively. So it is completely different now. So when I started in 2011, the small studio that we had in our park boot camps, I think were 98 to 99% expat. And the Thais that came, they studied in the US or something like that, or they were born abroad. So pretty much 100% expat. When we opened the lab, because it was sexier, it was cooler, it was more interesting, we got loads of PR without even trying to get PR. TV shows, magazines coming in and interviewing us. So it quite quickly became 30 or 40% Thai. So 30 or 40% local. And that almost overnight opened the market up. We went from a very small percentage of Bangkok residents that are expats to pretty much potentially anyone in the city. And then over the years, that shifted more and more. Now with Base, we're about 80% Thai, which is incredible because it enables us then to open up gyms potentially, around the city, around the country, as opposed to being like a very niche thing for expats. So it's completely transformed. I mean, now in Bangkok, it's more developed than Bristol for sure. In terms of the fitness industry, you've got big box gyms, you've got strength and conditioning studios like Base, Pilates bar, yoga, rhythm cycling like Soul Cycle. You kind of have it all. So it's built a lot.
And then you also mentioned the lab. And now when you were initially telling that story, you said it was the kind of first boutique gym of its kind within that area. And before you went on to say it kind of exploded. In my mind, I was thinking, I wonder if there was a challenge to get that out there because it's a brand new concept, a brand new price point, and will people actually understand the value of what you were bringing? But obviously, you said it exploded kind of effortlessly in terms of a marketing perspective. But I imagine there was something you were doing within the gym that ignited the spark to give it that exposure. So what was it about that first, the lab itself that you think had the impact that it did?
It's an interesting reflection. I would say it's half luck, half by design. So we didn't really know anything about sort of marketing, and digital marketing wasn't really so much of a thing then. We didn't really talk about it as much, not like they do now. But I think on the sort of branding and PR perspective, we did a great job. So our first studio before we opened the lab was literally a converted office, right? And we used to get complaints from the neighbors all the time. And I mean, it just looked kind of like a joke. But, we had good classes, and so we had a good business there. But with the lab, Richard Cohen, my old boss, did a fantastic job of just designing it really nicely. So you walked in, you're like, wow, people took photos, Instagram was becoming big. Then it kind of just sort of caught on. I guess it was like the accidental part. It's sort of, it became like a trend in Bangkok. We had celebrities coming in, people like bringing their friends and naturally doing referrals. We had a lot of natural PR, so they would reach out to us, TV shows, they would come into the lab. So I think it was kind of really right place, right time, like literally right place, not just Bangkok, but literally like where we were locationed was like right in a prime area. And I just feel like all the stars kind of aligned, and then it wasn't on us to really sort of double down on that. So then Richard kind of leaned into it. He brought in a production team, and we had like videos done. We started focusing, paid ads weren't so much of a thing, but more on sort of like organic marketing. We'd started like a Facebook page, and we'd have videos and stuff on that. And so I guess we sort of made the most of an opportunity that presented itself a little bit by accident.
Yeah. And
then, but a few years later, I had to be much more purposeful. Yeah. And that was where I messed up. 4 years later, or 5 years later, the industry had developed a lot, and I didn't see that, and I had to learn that.
That's what I was going to ask next, because you had this like boom in this first place. Did you go into base thinking, well, it's going to be similar process to the first gym, which just kind of exploded on its own? Was that part of the mentality going into creating base?
A little bit. I didn't really give it enough thought. I mean, we did make it sort of a bit more special. The equipment was a little bit nicer. We gave towels, and no boutique gyms were giving towels. We had nicer bathrooms, and we had good coaches. And I just sort of thought all of that would be enough, because that was enough before. But
amazing. So went in on the service, went in on the interior, went in on the wow experience for towels, and you thought that you'd open it and they would come.
Exactly. And now I sort of joke about it, this whole idea. I actually remember saying, build it and they will come. Or I think my business partner said it to me, and I was like, okay, cool. Well, we're building something special, so they will come. The other sort of little phrase that I joke about now that I said is, and I even said this to our first manager that started. He was talking to me about, how are we going to get sales? I was like, we're really good at what we do. The product will sell itself. And then 3 months later, when he wasn't trying to sell anything to anyone, I pulled him up on it. I said, mate, come on, make more of an effort. And he goes, you said the product sold itself. I was like, shit, I did say that. And I realized in that moment that, no, it doesn't really sell itself. I mean, it can, right? Sometimes, but you can't run a successful business. You can't grow a business thinking the product will sell itself. It absolutely doesn't. And especially in fitness, people need that extra sort of push. So that was a massive learning curve for me. And I needed that. Yeah. I needed that moment when I realized that I wasn't doing things in the right way, and it was a real big wake-up call.
Well, I think that's where most gym owners learn, right? They do something and they assume that this will work, and it doesn't. It's through that realization or mistake that they go, I need to do something different, and then they figure out what it is. So if you could go back in time, what do you think you would have done differently with hindsight?
Oh man, so the first thing I would have done is had proper systems and processes for everything. Onboarding new front desk staff. Coaches, we did a better job, because again, that was more of my background, right? Like being a coach, managing coaches, hiring coaches. So we did a little bit better there. A few mistakes for sure, but much bigger mistakes kind of on the front desk staff, who are the first people that anyone sees when they come in. They are essentially kind of selling the product. So much better processes and systems for them. That would have enabled us to kind of keep our better staff as well, because we didn't really have good training or good processes. Good people would leave quite quickly, and bad people would stay quite a long time. More sales training, better marketing to start. We didn't really do anything in the beginning. A little bit of PR that we got, again, because we were a new gym in Bangkok, but We opened in, I think it was August 2016. We only started paid ads in January 2017. And that was huge. And that was a big learning curve for me. I spoke to one of the lead generation guys, listened to his pitch and thought, I think we'll just try and do it ourselves internally. And that worked fantastically well for a few years.
Back in the days where it was super easy to
Right.
run marketing.
You have a
where you didn't have to
photo.
you could just boost the post and let everything flood in there. Yeah,
Exactly.
The
So that's
glory
become
days.
harder since then, of course, right? And especially in Bangkok, not many people were doing paid ads at all. So we kind of rode that wave for a little bit. And when it stopped working, we went in other directions for lead generation.
Something you mentioned that, I wish I had better systems in place for training the front of staff and basically for every process throughout the gym. Now, we're probably guilty of this on this podcast, and many people, they say, you need to have your systems in place. You need to have this system in place. And some people might be listening and it's like, well how do I make the system? What's that process of making the system? So, like just the question to you is like, how do you go about systematizing those processes from front of desk to whether it's the service to the marketing? Like, what's the process for you actually building out those systems so then when new people do come in, they can just fall into the system? Like, what is that process like? If you could outline that process, that'd be amazing.
Yeah, so it took honestly about 3 years before we had a set of processes that I was happy with, because I was like, how do you do this SOP thing, right? And so I'm kind of looking online, there's no ChatGPT or anything like that, and just trying to sort of work it out along the way. Spoke to people in F&B, saw what they did, and just gradually started building processes for all of the basic things. So just starting off, when the first person arrives at the branch at the beginning of the day, how can you kind of dumb it down? So, I mean, I don't know how to open base right now. So let's say all of our front desk was sick, the whole lot, everyone, the whole team, and I had to go and open the gym. I want to go and say, okay, here's the 15 things I need to do. So like turn on the computer, turn on the lights, like really sort of dumb it down as much as you can.
And so you record that process step by step. And is that stored somewhere so you could go and look at that process?
Yeah, just on a Google Doc, or you could do a video if it's something a little bit more in depth. Certainly if it's like a service or sales thing, I'd recommend going a bit more in depth than just kind of scripts. Like videos are great, or like Loom videos if it's something online. Like we have SOPs around Mind Body, and we just use like a Loom video that would do a screen grab basically to show how to do certain things, how to book a class, cancel a class, set up a new client. And so like I said, it took 3 years.
Yeah.
I've found that some people are just systems focused. They just naturally get it, and some people don't. So I tried to assign building systems to people that didn't really get it, and we wasted a lot of time doing that.
And so did you actually build the systems, or did you assign it to the right person eventually?
A bit of both.
Yeah.
In the end, I had to step in. I got frustrated with people. It was my fault. I was giving a task to someone who wasn't equipped to do it.
Yeah.
So it was 100% on me. But in those days, again, I was kind of feeling my way around in the dark, and I was getting frustrated that people weren't doing it. And now I look back and go, that wasn't on them. That was absolutely on me.
Do you think it is possible for someone to be able to delegate the responsibility to help with the systems? Because
100%,
there's different types of entrepreneurs, right? There's some that are, let's say, more visionary, or they have their kind of zone of genius in some elements. But when it comes to the meticulous organization of listing out every single activity and placing that in a digestible format, that takes attention to detail. And some entrepreneurs may not have that attention
100%.
to detail. But so do you feel it's possible to be able to delegate that process?
Yeah.
For sure?
I mean, you have to. It's just my mistake was delegating it to the wrong person.
Yeah.
So now, for example, like our fitness manager, who's fantastic, Jeff in Bangkok, American guy, but I know he can do it. So let's say there's a new area where our systems are a little bit weak. I know I can say, look, Jeff, work on that and we'll touch base on it next week. And so, you need to do that, especially now we have free studios and I have the fit guide and everything else. But at the time, unfortunately, it was a bit more immature, let's say, how the business was set up. And I had to kind of get in myself. And I actually quite enjoy that part. But of course, now I can't do that. And now for most roles, I don't really know exactly what they do. So some other people have to build it. So it's just about assigning it to the right people and honestly kind of hiring the right people. So now when we hire managers, as part of the recruitment process, I'll make sure that their system's focused, because if they're not, they won't work at base.
And essentially, so the process to systematize is just to report or record everything that you do step by step and place it somewhere where it can be easily accessed and people can have a step-by-step instruction of how to do something.
Yes. So let's say, I mean, it might be interesting for some of the listeners and viewers to look at the coaching. So we have systems around every single part of the client experience, right? And how to plan a class, what time they should arrive at the studio, which is at least 25 minutes before. Then they set up the space. They make sure the workout is up on the screen. Then they go to front desk and check if there's any first timers. If there are first timers, they go through a specific process with them, which is introducing themselves, finding out their name. Do they have any injuries? And we start at base, and I'm pretty proud of this. Our class is exactly on time to the second.
Wow,
Literally.
so we
have a clock that counts down. But then a minute 30, they invite the clients onto the training floor. right? Then you kind of give a final, like, if anyone's got any questions before we kick off, injuries, make sure you let me know. And then it's literally 3, 2, 1. Okay, guys, my name is Jack. Welcome to base. Today's session is base build or base X or whatever it is. So, you know, it's all systemized. And then we have it, well, about 3 weeks of intense training for new coaches, and then like an ongoing process of feedback and observations to make sure they're doing it. And coaches, well, the kind of coaches that work well at base love that.
Yeah.
You know, they love that they get given that, because at most gyms, it's like, oh, this is kind of an S&C class, do some S&C things, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Or this is a high rocks class, do some high rocks things. But we give them like all the tools to deliver a great class. And I think, you know, good coaches really appreciate them.
Because there could be gym owners listening to this that have a well-oiled ship, let's say, but the information is just stored within the team members. So they might have a good process of welcoming the client and running the sessions, but then if one person leaves, then that system just disappears forever. So if you could have great retention, you could have a great service, great reviews, and good referrals because of that. But if one person leaves and you don't have that system in place, then all of a sudden it could just crumble, right?
100%. So again, I talk about this a lot publicly. I'm quite passionate about it. So there's a few issues with that. One is great people leave. You can't always replace great people with great people, and that's a big problem, right? Second one, and I went through this and it really helped me in a way, is what if you open a second location? Can you find another group of great people and then rely on 2 lots of great people not leaving? And that's just not going to happen. You know, when you open a third, a load of other holes sort of start to emerge. And so for me, going from 1 to 2, wow, we've got holes, we need to fill those in. Okay, we got that to a stage where we can expand more. Then going to 3 clubs, and again, more holes pop up, and you kind of fill those up through better systems, better training, better accountability, maybe even bringing in, you know, sort of like a regional manager or something like that to oversee some of the other processes. And so when we got to that stage and we'd kind of been through some difficult jumps, we really tried to build the business in mind of having 10 studios or 20 studios. Now, pre-COVID, that was the plan, to open in Singapore. That's what we wanted to do. And that's sort of been shelved because of everything that happened in 2020 and a bit more focus on the fit guy. But I think we did a good job then of shifting our mindset. And I think even if you have 1 club, think, what if we had 5? How can we build the system so this works with 5? And I think with 3, building with 10 in mind really helped us run 3. Honestly, fairly easy. I mean, I could only do a few hours a week, really, and still the business would run.
And do you think that's a good idea to say to, like for a gym owner, to say, look, imagine like you've got 1 site and you're building this, but like, would this system work for 2 sites? Is that a good way to look at it? Even if you don't have an intention of 2 sites,
100%.
But just like, hey, like, if there was a second site, would this process that we have still work? Now, I remember Ben, founder of FMA, in the very early days when we were working with just about 30 people, and we were, you know, helping clients, helping clients like getting results and all this sort of stuff. But the process is, what he would always say to me is like, if we were at 100, how would this work? And he said, if we were at 100, the business would break right now. So we need to we need to build out this service like we've got 100 people, even though we've only got, because we can manage what we've got right now, right, with the processes. But he would say, if we had 100, this would break.
100 clients.
Right? Yeah. Like that, if we had triple the clients at that very early stage, this would break. So it was like we had to build in anticipation for when it ever got like that. And is it the same? Like, do you think gym owners should look at the same with their systems? Like, build it for if it was bigger, because that's actually ultimately going to make the business easier to run.
Absolutely. And I'd say, yeah, maybe, you know, if you had 50 clients, look at 100. If you've got 1 gym, look at like, if we run 3 gyms, you know, not 50 or 100, because it's a different way that you run it. I mean, I haven't been through that, but from my understanding from speaking to people who've opened that many gyms, it's a different way of thinking, a different structure, right? But if you have 1, think about if I had 3, let's say, would this still work? And so not only can you scale and open 3 if you want to, but there's 2 other really big things. Can I have a month off? And you might need a month off because you've just been working ridiculously hard and you might be burning out, or it might be forced on you. You know, you might have health scare, family stuff, whatever it is. So can you have a month off and you've actually got a business when you come back to it is huge. The third thing, which is just as important, and I made this mistake of not having this mindset, is what if you want to sell? And you might say, like I said, no, I'm not going to sell. If you say you're going to sell, then it's taken some of the soul out of it. You know, it doesn't mean as much to you. You're kind of selling out a little bit. And I realize now that's ridiculous. You know, 9 years in, even though I have no plans to sell base and I don't want to, I can absolutely envisage a path that at some point I might want to sell. I might want to focus more on the fit guide, more on family. I might move. I might get sick. All manner of things could happen. If you don't build your business in that way, then you can't sell it. If you just have a team of great people, any buyer is going to say, right, if we take you out, are these great people going to stay? And you can't say they will, right? Even if they love the new owner, you just can't say they'll stay. So there's no systems. Your business essentially becomes worth almost nothing, as much as the equipment and as much as the lease. Whereas you might think, oh, we made, you know, 100 grand profit last year, so 3 times, 4 times multiple, I'm worth 400 grand.
Doesn't
not
really
at
work
all.
like that.
Does not work like that, right? So if you build it so that you could scale to 3 and the systems are there, and if these great people leave, you can get decent people or good people to like be great through having good systems, then you actually might have a business that could sell. And yeah, trust me, someone who's been doing this for 9 years, that's something that will be important to you at some point.
So making it sellable is basically making it work without you, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really good way to look at it. Yeah.
And do you think that if you have a gym or multiple gyms and there's like a key player in the business that if they left, it would cause do you think that's a threat? Like, but you know, like the business can run without you, but there's this key person and he's running the show. But if that person just abruptly left, like, do you think being in that position is a threat to the business owner, if that makes sense?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
So the interesting thing about that is I was that person.
Yeah.
So when I worked at the lab, my boss had actually moved to Australia.
So you were the kind of...
I was the manager, the MD, I think was my title, and the boss, the owner, was living in Australia at the time, like permanently. And so it was a great experience for me because I got to run the business and I learned a lot, but I absolutely was that key person. And I was interested in getting involved as like a partner. I didn't really have much money to put in. And so that didn't really materialize. And it sort of shifted so that I was like, you know what, I'm kind of ready to do my own thing now. And then when I left, it did spark a difficult period. He basically had to move back from Australia. He'd kind of set up his life there. We get on really well now, but honestly, it was quite a difficult time when I left. I think sort of for both of us really, because he was a good friend, but we get on fantastically now and we still meet up and everything else. But it was definitely difficult for both of us. So I was that person, and really looking back, you know, looking at it just from his perspective as a business owner, obviously I'm happy he didn't do this. He probably should have given me just 10 or 20%, said, look, here's 10% of the business. And I would have been like, brilliant, I'm going to put my heart and soul into this and I'm not going to leave. So I became a more sticky, like key person.
So if there is that person that potentially is like a pillar in the business, essentially, you've got to get them to really buy in. Otherwise, potentially they may... I don't know, let's say, and I don't know the person personally, but like that person's in Australia and you're running the business. Now let's put that scenario to a different gym and a different person. They might be like, this person's the owner. I'm actually running the business, but I could be doing this myself now. And there might be in some way, I'm not saying it was for you particular, but in another scenario, there might be like some mild resentments of that situation, and that person goes, actually, I'm just going to do my own thing, right? So, but had the business owner gone, I want to give you shares in the business, then that those feelings may not be there.
It could have been a number of different ways. So it could be shares. And for me, shares were quite important. There was something almost like psychologically important to me that, I've got to have a share in this business. I've kind of been here since day one. So that was kind of important to me. But it could just be financial. You could say, I'll give you 10% of profits. And if the gym's doing really well and the manager's on, I don't know, let's say 60 grand a year plus the gym's making, 100 grand, then he's getting 25% of profits and it bumps up to 80 or 90. He might say, you know what, it's difficult, or she might say it's difficult to open a gym. I'm not sure I can do what we've done here. I'm actually quite happy with this. But you have to think about how you can incentivize them and get them to stay. One thing I will add, which I think is super important, try not to let that happen at all. And again, that's when it comes back to sort of brand systems, having something that can be replicated, making sure that no one is really that important, because it does make the business incredibly vulnerable, just as kind of my old boss saw when I leave. And I just want to clarify as well, there was no resentment from me. I respected that it was his business. Some people do. Some people do. I just kind of wanted to clarify that.
Of course.
But some people definitely do. They do resent it. You're there in Australia doing your thing and I'm here running the business. Definitely some people do. And I think once you start down that path, you're kind of in a little bit of trouble. I always felt very well looked after. I thought actually he was being very fair. There was no unfair part of it. My priorities just shifted where I was like, you know what, this turns me on more. I want to do what you did 5 years ago, and I want to kind of do my own thing and put my own spin on it. But yeah, as a business, try not to let there be this person.
And so, something you mentioned earlier that I want to go back to is that you mentioned the sessions on the second, a minute and a half, and then the coach will start the process. But it sounded like, and maybe it's not word for word, but you can let me know.
Sure.
It sounds like it was almost like a scripted process that, like almost like a performance that coach is going through there that you have created. So it's not like the coach is like, hey, like as you said, today's a S&C session. Can you just work that up? Like you say what the business says what the session is, and they say how to, hey, I'm Charlie. today's session? Like, is there
Yes.
can you run me through the process of the session that
For
takes
sure.
place?
Yeah. So they arrive 25 minutes before, and we have that whole process that I've been through, setting it up. We start the classes bang on time. We have a minute to introduce the class. So that is, you offer your name, you offer kind of something about the goals and the aims of the class, go through the structure of the class, so what they're going to expect for the next 45 or 55 minutes. Those are our 2 class lengths. That should take around about 60 seconds. Then we have 5 minutes to go through the workout. Can vary a little bit depending on class. So that would be going through station by station, going through the movements and everything else. Then we have a 3.5 minute warm up, then 1 minute, and this is all on the timer, right? 1 minute to get ready on your first station. We have some technology that we built and created as well. We can go through that if you want, but we kind of explain that and how that works. And then we have, let's say, 5 minutes on each station, which would be just, for example, alternating between conditioning. You know, you might have skier intervals that you do for 5 minutes, and then you might do like deadlifts working up to a 5 rep max or something for X amount of minutes. And so the structure would all be there, and then it finishes bang on time. You know, so it'd finish with like 2 or 3 minutes remaining, and then we go through like a quick cool down and a quick stretch. Then we have a wrap up of the class. So it's like, thank you for joining, guys. My name is Jack. I'll be back here on Wednesday. Hope to see you guys there. And then we have, I think it's like 15 minutes at the end where you kind of hang around and you chat to clients. So it's very structured. People can get trained up to do it very, very well. It means that they can actually focus on the important stuff, which is the coaching.
Yeah.
They don't need to worry about the structures and the timings or even the workout. It's there. But
Yeah.
that doesn't mean their job is done, and it doesn't mean anyone can do it.
And do they also simultaneously have a little bit of, when it comes to that coaching to person, a little bit of autonomy when they're coaching the individuals on the floor?
100%.
Yeah.
So if anything, I think what we give them allows them to focus more on that. So it doesn't just mean that our coaches are like cheerleaders, are like, yeah, you're doing great, guys, high fives, there's the timer, sort of do your thing. You know, I know some brands have almost expanded like sort of based on that. Like I've even heard internally they say kind of anyone can deliver this workout, just sort of bring in some influencers or some pretty people and you're good to go. That's not us. So they're all qualified coaches. You know, in Thailand, it's a little bit harder to get your qualifications, but we do require that all of our coaches are internationally certified, for example. And we actually offer NASM certifications through base. And so the structure's there. That's like a few days to go through that. Then we go through, how do you personalize it? How do you give it your own spice and your own energy? How do you coach people? How do you deal with like first timers and beginners to fitness? How do you deal with the person who thinks they kind of know it all but really needs some help?
Oh, wow,
so we kind of go through all of these different
Like,
scenarios.
almost different like avatars.
Yes,
almost.
yeah. So we might have someone, you know, who's been training for 20 years and thinks they know it all, but you can see that their form can be improved. And so we do role plays on that. So yeah, I think the structure doesn't dumb it down at all. It just helps the coaches focus on the really important stuff.
I should have asked this much earlier. What's the model of the gym in terms of? What's the model? Yeah.
Group class and personal training,
Yeah.
basically. So no open gym. We've experimented a little bit with small group personal training, but it's an education piece because it's not really a thing in Bangkok.
Yeah.
So it's mostly 1-to-1 or 1-to-2.
Yeah.
That's our personal training. That's about 50% of the business.
Yeah.
And then we have group classes. Well, we've got some High Rocks classes now, which are 30 people.
Yeah.
We got High Rocks affiliation, but most of our classes are 20 to 24.
Okay, cool. And in the style of training is just like functional training.
Yes, yeah, we've got ski ergs, we've got, you know, assault runners, air bikes, rig. So we do some barbell work as well, so a little bit more advanced, dumbbells, kettlebells,
And
TRX.
Is it mostly memberships or is there a drop-in component as well?
Yes, so we do, it's about 50% would be on like a monthly recurring membership of some kind, and then 50% would be class pass, drop-ins.
Yeah.
We've got more flexible packages.
Yeah.
So as we discussed before we went live, it's a little bit different to say like a bit of a quieter town where you might have a bit of a different approach.
Yeah, because you're, you know, in a busy city, like you've got a lot of footfall, so there will be people that will come in for drop-ins or come in to, you know, buy a class pack or something like that. But whereas if you're in a smaller town or less population, you don't have that footfall to be able to rely on that level. So you're always going to have those people there, so you can be a bit more reassured that you've got the volume of people dropping in for sessions essentially.
Yeah, it's definitely a different sort of vibe. It's quite transient. We get a lot of people from Singapore visiting and they'll kind of do drop-in classes. We've got people that want to do like a bit of yoga, a bit of Pilates. They want to drop in and do a base class like once a week. So we have some more flexible options to them, but we kind of make it disproportionately attractive to become a member. So for example, if you do let's say a 10 session pack, it's probably about £20 per class, maybe £18 per class is what it would cost you. But if you commit to, 4 times a week, it ends up being, you know, a lot less than that. So we try and make it like very attractive to say, look, if you're going to come twice, you might as well come a little bit more often and become a member.
Yeah. How much is like on average a membership? And if you could translate it into whether it's pounds, dollars, or whatever. Yeah.
I say into pounds. I mean, I'm from the UK, so I should be able to do the pounds, right? It would be about £120 for 4 times a week.
Okay, nice.
And we have like you can train once a day, so 30 times a month, and that would be about £150, something like that. So not dissimilar to UK prices.
And how many members do you have within the gyms?
We've got 3 gyms. One's a bit more like PT, which we use for kind of overspill.
Of course.
Yeah, between the 2 gyms, which are fairly close, so memberships you can actually use both. We have around about 500 members between the 2.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah, and that'd be a combination of group class and personal training
and PT. And I was actually thinking, as you were saying this, if you didn't have the drop-in options, it may actually hurt the business revenues. But if you were to just say you can only do this 3 times a week, do you think the business make less, or obviously you don't know 100%, but because you've got people coming in from Singapore and you've got tourists coming through and people will drop in, do you think it actually may? Yeah.
Interesting story. So with group class, it's just sort of the way the business has evolved, really, that I think we have so many people that are used to doing it. They've been training with us for years. I think it'd be a really hard thing to shift. But what we did in 2020 is, so we used to have for personal training, again, it embarrasses me a little bit to think about it. We had 10 sessions, 25, 50, 100, right? And it gets progressively cheaper, just kind of the classic PT model. And I've been thinking about changing it for a while, but I thought it's so ingrained in our clients, it's going to be really difficult to change. And I think it was January 2020, actually. Wasn't aware, obviously, of how much things would change, but looking ahead, I was like, right, let's restructure this to get better client commitments. So we made the flexible packages way more expensive.
Yeah.
It's like a big jump up. And then we said, and really I would change it even now again, but again, it's a little bit difficult. We did 8 weeks, 12 weeks, 24 weeks, 2, 3, 4 times a week. And so we very much ingrained that into the sales conversation, so that we could recommend, rather than like, it would usually end up being, oh, why don't you do 10 sessions and see how it goes, which is like the worst thing you can say from a sales perspective. You're actually doing a real disservice to the person in front of you, because if they want to lose 20 kg or change their life, saying, okay, let's do 10 sessions and see how you feel is not a good step forwards. So what's a much better step forwards is like, look, you want to lose 20 kg, your doctor said you're not feeling very healthy, you're not very healthy, you're at high risk of certain diseases now. Let's commit to a proper change. Let's do 3 times a week, 24 weeks, and after 6 months, you're going to be in a much better place. If you follow our recommendations, you can kind of expect something like this to happen. And they'll be like, yeah, let's do it. As opposed to like, do you want 10, 25, or 50? So we basically did that shift for PT, and it was huge. Honestly, if we could start again, and I still might do this, I would scrap 8 weeks. Yeah. And I would say if you want to do PT with us, it's a 12-week minimum.
So your higher level service, more personal led service, is more of a commitment based.
Correct.
Your class is less of a commitment based.
For sure.
And
and we even have like PT clients that will come and do classes because it's fun. And we have all the community stuff and that kind of thing. But yeah, personal training, that was a fantastic shift.
Yeah.
Not only was it a jump up in revenue, but it changed the sales conversation. It made it so much more natural, so much easier for the people that did the sales, which was typically me and Jeff and a couple of other managers. Made it so much easier for them, and it's better for the clients.
Yeah.
Again, that person that comes in, and this is the way we need to see fitness sales. How can we help them the most? How can we know they need to do this long term. They need to do this forever, right? Especially if they don't train, if they're unhealthy, if they've got weight to lose. Let's set them up properly for success so that when they walk out the door, they think, wow, I'm going to get success here. I feel ready. And again, because other gyms aren't doing this, they're not having these strong conversations, typically in the industry. When you do it, you really stand out. When people inquire about personal training and I have a telephone call with them, we usually sell over the phone. Usually,
oh, really?
We try to.
Is that a one call close is what you do?
That's what we go for, yeah. So it's either, we do have like kind of a trial pack, which is 4 sessions where they can come in, and that's the kind of feed into a longer term program, or a full commitment. If they really want to come in, we will do it, but we make sure that they're serious. We make sure that if they like the training, they're ready to commit. So we give a few kind of pre-qualifiers to make sure if we're going to go into the gym and actually meet them, there's a good chance they'll convert. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like the system you've built is like the correct process for the person that's in front of you. Because some people are like, I just do the one call close, or I just do consultations, where there'll be people that will happily pay over the phone, but there'll also be people that may not want to give information over the phone, but will want to come in. So it sounds like you go, look, like we'll get you in for a commitment. This is how much it is. And if they go, great. If not, then you've got this other intro offer potentially to see if they just want to come for it. And then it's come in for a meeting and actually check out the place if they really want to. Is that kind of how it is? It's like a staggered process?
Yes. So we'd first go for a commitment. We'd go for 12 weeks. That would kind of be the standard. Because again, if you can do that over the phone with an inquiry, you're doing quite well. The leads are pretty warm. They usually inquire through our website. We've got very good SEO, maybe through an ad. And so we'll go for that. And, again, we didn't do this very well in the beginning at all, but there's a whole conversation that we have before so that we can make that right recommendation. And sometimes just from hearing them talk, you're like, honestly, they're not going to do a 12 weeks. It's not right for them. It's like, look, let's go for 4 sessions. let's get you in. I want to show you the gym. You've never done anything like this before. You're obviously a little bit wary. Let's start you off with 4. You know, Sugar, that's just one of our coaches, is going to look after you. She's awesome. She's worked with people like you. Honestly, I think that's the right one for you, because I can see that they're a little bit nervous. They haven't done anything like this before. And I know that Sugar's going to do a fantastic job and going to turn that into a long-term client. If, like I mentioned, the example where they want to lose 20 kg and change their life, I wouldn't really want to recommend 4, but it's there if I need to. So I'd say, and again, if they want to come in and
it's like a little on-ramp version, basically. But the intention is to get them to commit afterwards.
Correct. But then if they're like, look, I'm not too sure. So look, we do have an option for 4 sessions, so you can kind of see it first if it will work for you. Once they're in the door, you know, we do a fantastic job. Our coaches are very good. Or if they want to come in, we would just pre-qualify by saying, you know, if we're the right fit for you, are you ready to make a commitment to your training? Just kind of get that, yeah, you know, if it's a good fit, then I will. Because I always say at the end of a sales conversation, the worst thing to hear is like, let me get back next week, or, you know, I'll get paid in like 2 weeks, I'll start then. So it's like, you know, are you ready to start if we are the right fit for you?
Yeah.
If you like our training space, if you like our coaches, and if you get like a yes, because I'd rather just get like a no, it's not right for me, which is fine, rather than like, you know, I'll think about it.
Yeah.
So we're just trying to like set up that conversation so that we're going to make a decision, either way. Either you're going to train with base or not. Either one's totally fine. But, you know, if we're right, are you ready to get started? And if you get a yes, it just gets easier to handle those objections later.
How quickly, once an inquiry comes in, do you aim to get hold of the inquiry?
As quick as possible. So I think I love the, and I don't know how it is in the UK, because again, I'm a little bit disconnected to the UK market, but in Bangkok, they are like stunned if you call them straight away. They are like kind of in shock a little bit, just that you're so responsive. I mean, it's almost like the sale becomes quite easy if you can respond within, like, sometimes it pings on my computer, and if I'm free, I'll either send it to Jeff or I'll just call them up there and then, and they're like stunned.
Wow, yeah.
And I think it sort of feeds into this, like, wow, this place is professional, they're sharp, they're
Yes.
on it. And again, we're not pushy, you know.
It's just an inquiries coming
There's a
in.
hang up in the fitness industry
Yeah.
about, oh, we don't need to be pushy or anything like that. I'm not pushy at all. I just have a great conversation with them.
Yeah.
And we've got like 6 or 7 questions that we ask. We dig as deep as we can, starting off of, you know, what are your goals and why are these important to you? The more that we can kind of dig into that, why have you contacted us today? Like, why today? Where do you want to see yourself in 12 weeks? Do you have any injuries? Is there anything I need to know? And at the end of it, they're kind of pumped and they're kind of excited. And then when you say, look, based on what you've told me, I think the 12-week program would be awesome for you. Sugar's going to be amazing. You said you want to train 3 times a week. This is what a program looks like. What do you think? I quite like putting it back on them as well, you know, rather than just saying it and sort of waiting. Just like, do you think that's a good option for you?
Yeah.
Or we like the 2-option close. You know, we recommend 12 weeks. We also have an 8-week program. Which one do you think might be best for you? I find that works really well. And what I want is when they put down the phone, they don't think, God, Jack just forced me to buy a personal training package. I don't think anyone's ever thought that. I want them to feel, wow, I am pumped to come in and get started with Sugar next week. And I want to sort of say another thing. I used to hate sales. I used to think all of these things. I don't want to pressure people. It would get to like the price point, and I would like start getting really nervous. And maybe 10 sessions. Do you think that might be okay? Or like, do you want 10 sessions? Like, let me think about it. Okay, cool. Let me know next week. So I used to be that person. It took me a while to sort of really change my mindset. Now I love sales, and I kind of want everyone in the fitness industry to love sales, because if they have this mindset of we have an obligation to help this person get started and get started in the right way, it's kind of the first step towards, you know, being good at it. And it feels good. You know, it feels good, not just for the business, but for helping this person in front of you.
And what you've just said is, you know, it's an obligation to help somebody, because if you're speaking to somebody and you know you can help them, but for whatever reason they are giving you an objection, that's most likely a fear or a belief that or a story they've told themselves like over years. So if you can see you can help them, they do have an objection, it's your obligation to maybe challenge that in a supportive way, because if you know you can truly change the outcome of their life, like physically, mentally, then you have an obligation to.
There's one client that sticks out in my mind, and I look back and I know that I let them down. So he was a British guy based in Bangkok, and he was huge. I mean, he must have been like 160, 170, and he basically said, if this doesn't work, I'm going to get liposuction. That's kind of what he started off. And I mean, I can't quite remember the process, but it's probably a very weak process. It's probably like, oh, okay, cool, I can help you with that. Here's our packages. And he was like, oh, I'll just go session by session. And I was training at the time. This is when we just opened base, so I was also coaching. I mean, I gave that up a few years into the journey. But at the time I was coaching, and he was like, I want to train with you. I'll pay your extra rate. Okay, so we just did session by session, and I think he lasted about 2 weeks. He cancelled a whole ton of sessions, and then he just disappeared off the face of the earth. And I was like, I really failed him. That's really how I felt. You know, I didn't, and that, to be honest, I was just sort of, I did want to help him, but I think I was sort of thinking like, yeah, how do I do this thing? Like, how do I do this sales thing? How do I get him started? I think now I would be more, okay, this guy needs my help. Let's get him started properly. Honestly, I wouldn't have let him buy one session. And I think he would have responded actually quite well to that, looking back. You know, it was only a few weeks that I knew him, but I got to know him quite well. And this was really, really important to him. And he could definitely afford it as well. You know, I know that he could afford it because of his businesses that he ran and stuff like that. And so looking back, I think I should have gone way deeper into like what to expect, why it's important for him to do this, why he's here today, and then set him up on like a proper program. You know, let's do 12 weeks. Let's do this properly. He wanted to train every day as well. And that was a mistake. I think I should have said, look, let's do 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 12 weeks. Let's stick to that. Let's make sure you can do that. And let's see where you're at in 12 weeks. And I think he would have gone for it. And maybe would have got great results. And so I let him down.
And when you really dive in more and sell the outcome versus the process, if that makes sense, they're going to be more bought into it, right? Because they know what they're here for. Going back to what you mentioned about speed to lead, actually at PerformX, I showed a stat where it said only 7% of businesses will follow up with inquiries within the first 5 minutes. 55% will follow up after 5 days of the inquiry taking place. So if you want to make more sales or actually even get ahead of your competition, just call those inquiries quicker.
I totally agree. And you know what? I think because I didn't enjoy sales, I actually think a sale lead will come through and like, I'll do it later. I'll do it tomorrow. I'm kind of busy at the moment. I remember once the sale leads had like stacked up. This was during the first 6 months. And we had kind of 10 leads that were like personal training leads that weren't called. And this was like a few days later. And I was like, shit, you know, the numbers aren't great. Let me like call some of these leads. And I was quite nervous calling, you know, different time. And most people didn't even know who we were. You know, some of them were like 5 or 6 days ago, and they were like, "Base? What's base?" It was like, "Oh, you know, you filled out like an ad online." And like, "Oh, yeah." No chance. Like, absolutely no chance, right?
This is what we have. Sometimes people go, they don't remember what they opted in for, but it's like, but when did you call them? Because let's say they're scrolling on social media and then you call them 3 days later. There's a lot of other stuff that they've just seen and consumed between that time. Whereas if it was 5 minutes or even an hour from when they opted in, or even 2 hours or 4 hours, like it's going to be much more relevant towards that window, and you're going to be more front of mind versus 2 days, 3 days, 4 days.
They're just not motivated anymore. So, you know, they had a burst of motivation, they saw an ad or a testimonial, whatever it might be, and they're like, wow, this looks good. And so if you can catch them then, maybe you can change their life. And again, that's how I want people to think about it. Doesn't matter about getting their money for a moment, but you can change their life. If you wait 3 days, you might lose the opportunity to change their life.
And it doesn't mean that they don't want their lives changed. It's just there's a burst of motivation. You have to catch that. But some gym owners, they're like, I only want people that want to kind of walk themselves in. You know, like they want to get them to come in, and then they don't want to have to try to get them in, if that makes sense. What would you say to it, like anyone with that attitude?
I mean, I can't say necessarily that's like wrong. If your brand is all about, we want, you know, people who want to get the best time in High Rocks possible, that's fine, right? But if it's going to be very difficult to run a successful gym, I think, with that mindset. I think it kind of just depends on what your brand's about. I mean, our personal training predominantly helps people that kind of really need help.
Yeah.
Or maybe they just got like a big goal that they want to hit and they probably can't hit it on their own. So with that kind of target client, we have to help people get there, right? I mean, look, in London, if a certain brand and a certain angle, maybe you could do something like that. But for the vast majority of gyms, it's going to be very difficult to be successful. Of course, it's lovely when you get a client who's like an amateur football player and, you know, I want to go semi-pro or whatever, and can you help me get there? Brilliant, right? We can give them all the drills and the S&C and stuff like that. There's just honestly not many of those people, certainly not in Bangkok anyway.
I think it's just important to remember that when someone does opt in through marketing, they're signaling that they want to make a change. And even, you know, if 5 days go past and now they're less motivated, they still want to make a change. Their motivation levels are just much lower because the time has gone on, and you just missed the opportunity for them to come to your service potentially.
Again, it's getting comfortable with this idea. It's not about like, oh man, they were ready to spend some money then and we could have got, you know, $1,000 or $2,000 in the bank. Just don't think of it like that. Think of it, we had a little window of opportunity where we could have got them started, and once we got them started, they would have been fine. We would have called them, we would have made sure they come in, you know, we would have done everything that we could to get them started, but we've missed that opportunity now, and we don't even get an opportunity to do it.
Because the next burst of motivation, like the first burst of motivation comes from the inquiry, the second burst comes from the sale, as in like the prospect. It's not about, oh, I could have got some money, but once I pay you and I commit to you, I'm now locked in and motivated. 100%. So the money, it's not a process of making money, but it's a process of getting them to give you money, because that's them locking in their motivation for a longer period of time. You've got a short burst of motivation from the marketing, and that will disappear if you are too slow. And then once they pay you, you have a longer burst of motivation because they're locking in.
So I really learned this the hard way. So a few times again in the early days, you have a great conversation, they're going to get started, brilliant, we got the sale. It's like, okay, well, come and meet Coach Sugar, let's use her again. Saturday morning, she'll look after you, brilliant. Saturday morning rolls round, she's supposed to pay when she arrives, the new client, but she doesn't turn up. And then she feels terrible and she's like done, she doesn't answer the call or anything, and we've just lost a client. And then Sugar feels bad because she's coming in on a Saturday morning and her client hasn't arrived, right? So everyone loses in that scenario. And maybe she just went out the night before, maybe she forgot about it. It could be a whole number of things, right? But you've now lost that client forever and you've lost that opportunity. So you've got to get the payment as soon as possible. So for us now, I will send them a message, or our team or me, whoever's making the sales call, will send the message instantly afterwards. This is how you get set up. You can pay by card here or bank transfer here. And we can only book that session in once it's been paid for. And like you said, once they actually pay for it, they're actually doing it.
Yeah.
Right? Otherwise, it's just like an idea. But once it's paid for, something definitely like shifts in their mind. And I cannot remember a time when someone's paid for a session and then just hasn't turned up and hasn't come. I'm sure it's happened a couple of times, but we're talking 99, 98% will turn up, they'll do the program, they'll get the results because we're good at what we do and our coaches are good. If we say, okay, just pay when you arrive, yeah, honestly, I reckon 60% show rate. So,
Yeah.
Most do, but a whole ton don't. And that's just terrible for literally everyone. Your team, the business, and, most importantly, that person.
One more thing going back to speed to lead is kind of an analogy I say is that, like, let's say there's something wrong with your bathroom and you called a plumber or inquired of a plumber. How quickly would you want that person to call you? And the answer is within 1 minute.
Yeah.
Because
there's water all over the bathroom
you
floor.
would be really, really happy. But if it was 5 days, that would not be helpful in the slightest, right? So, like, people are reaching out for help because they have a problem. Maybe it's not water in the bathroom, but treat your, as you said earlier, it's professional, it's slick, it's efficient. People are wowed by how quickly you actually.
It reflects what else you do in the business, and I think that's how people see it. Wow, if they're this professional, they're calling me this quickly and having this great conversation and assuring me of all the little things that I was concerned about, I feel totally fine going in. I was actually kind of nervous calling this gym or filling the form out. I was nervous about going in, but now I feel great. Jack sounds awesome. Sugar sounds awesome. It's great. And it's really interesting. Again, I don't know if this happens in the UK, but it does in Bangkok. So many times when we call a personal training lead and we get chatting to them, they'll say something like, I emailed 4 different gyms and no one got back to me. And you were the 5th gym I messaged and you got back to me like instantly.
That's insane.
And I'm like, and I've actually seen this over the last 9 years. Some of those gyms, I said, who did you contact? And they, ring off a few names. 6 months later, they closed down. And I'm like, well, you definitely had a lead.
Yeah.
You definitely had a lead. And they're now a client of ours and they're paying, personal training rates every single 12 weeks now. And they've been a client since then. So I know you've lost one client at least, right?
And
I'm sure it's many, many more.
Of people that are just coming in. It could be just a case you're just not either picking up the phone or you're actually replying to inbound messages, and that's just losing you sales.
It's almost impossible to be successful. I mean, maybe again they think that the product's going to sell itself, right? And they're just going to walk through the door and go, "I have 12 weeks, 3 times a week, please."
What would you say to any gym owners that, let's say, they're like, I called this lead and they didn't pick up. They're not interested anymore. Like,
yeah, I think it's just, and again, I'm passionate about this because I went through the journey myself of like being nervous when I called instead of actually enjoying it like I do now. I mean, they've put their details into the website or whatever it is, right? So we have to assume until they tell us otherwise that they want to get started, right? It would kind of be crazy to assume anything else and they want to get started on their fitness journey. So yeah, I mean, you have some kind of lead management system. We use the one through MindBody. So if we call and they don't answer, we would drop an email, maybe a WhatsApp, and then we would schedule another call, probably for later that day, because they might be working, and then if not, like the next day, and then we kind of have a whole process. And very rarely do we never get any response at all. But again, we're either looking for a yes, let's have a talk, or no, I'm not interested anymore, and that's fine. We can kind of put that to bed then. But until then, again, let's assume the worst. Let's assume for a moment that they're 50 kg overweight, and if we don't help them out, they're going to die in a year. Just assume that, right? It'll probably be less severe than that, but they've called for some reason. Or they've entered their details for some reason. They want to change their life in some way. They're not happy. They're not healthy. They're not moving very well. One of these things is true. So again, it goes back to that obligation, right? We have to do our very best.
But also, let's say I inquired for a gym and they try calling me now. I'm not going to pick up the phone. Now, that's a bit of a weird example because I'm not saying that everyone who doesn't pick up are on podcasts. But like they might be in a meeting at work. They might be with their partner. They might be doing something. So just because they don't pick up the phone, it doesn't mean that they're not interested. But I think it goes back to what you said, where if you don't like sales, you'll tell yourself a story to get out of it. So you'll go, they're not interested. But the reality reality is you just don't like it. You feel uncomfortable. So you're going to let the first story that justifies not calling that lead again be the one that you agree with, versus maybe they're just busy and I'm actually going to follow up through other channels and be consistent and call them later that day as well, and just be consistent with sales. Because the most successful businesses are the ones that have the most consistent sales systems. Something else I said it before, Max, like if I sign up to your gym and I sign up for 3 times a week, but I came once the first week, no times the second week, 3 times the third week, and once the fourth week, what are my results going to be like if I continue this irregular pattern of inconsistency? And the answer is not very good. And I believe a lot of gym owners are like that with their sales. They might focus for a week and then they drop the ball. And I think it all comes down to not having the systems in place, though, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's I think the systems honestly is the second part. The first part is the mindset. So, the things that you said there, it's kind of all about mindset, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, maybe they don't want to talk on the phone or whatever it is. It's all of these like stories that we tell ourselves, and you've got to get over that first. If you don't get over that, it's just going to be impossible. If you're feeling awkward because you're quote unquote bothering people, you're just not going to be successful as a salesperson. So that's the first thing to get over. Then the second thing is the systems, right? So even for me now, having done hundreds or thousands of sales calls, I have a process. I have these calls, and of course we might veer off in different directions. We might I've just had a kid, so if they've got a kid, we might chat about that for a little bit, or when they move to Bangkok and how they're finding it. So we can definitely veer off in other directions. But I'm following a very systemized process, and then at the end it's like, and I'm making notes, right? And then part of that process is saying back to them what they've told me. Really important part to let them know that, hey, I've listened to you and I've understood you. When they say, yep, you got it, Jack, thank you. Or they're, oh, actually, I forgot to say I've got a little niggling knee injury. Like, brilliant, that's great. I'll let Sugar know. And then that enables me to say, okay, based on what you've told me, I reckon this will be the right thing for you. What do you think?
And so you have someone that does the sales calls, but do you still also sometimes do them?
I do, yeah. So I've tried to step away a lot from the day-to-day stuff, but it's honestly hard to get people that can do it as passionately as me and Jeff. And I still enjoy it, to be honest.
And you're not on the gym floor, are you?
No, I do classes every now and again. I'll coach a class. No PT since 2 years into opening base.
So you've delegated on the gym floor, you've delegated front of house, you've delegated admin tasks, but the one thing that you haven't fully removed yourself, even though you've got 3 sites, is sales.
Yes.
So why is that?
Hard to find good people, and it's the high value of it. So I need to be very, very sure.
It's the highest value, one of the highest value tasks in the business, right?
Yeah, let's say I clean the floor. That costs not very much in Bangkok, so it would be ridiculous for me to do that, right? Manning the front desk, again, it's not particularly expensive. Running classes, again, it's, if you look at sort of what my hourly rate should be as the CEO of the company, it just doesn't make any sense. But a personal training lead I see is quite different. So, I mean, our packages start, 8 weeks, 2 times a week, would be around about £1,000 roughly, a little bit less, right? But that's not just £1,000. Most of our clients stay at least a year for personal training. So that would be 8 weeks times, let's say £6,000, £7,000. So for me, and because I enjoy it as well, it's absolutely worth doing. If my close rate is, say, for personal training, it'd be very high. Let's just say it's 70%, for example. If I assign that to someone and it's 50%, we're going to lose quite a lot. So again, if we were to scale, of course I need to. Jeff is just as good as me, so he's fantastic. So we do have 2 people. Obviously I'm away now in the UK, so he's doing all of the sales calls. Then he goes to America for a couple of weeks and I'll do the sales calls. So I know it can be taught to someone else, but yeah, because I enjoy it and it's high value, I'm at the moment, I'm still happy to do it.
I know gym owners that have been in the fitness industry in terms of gym ownership as long as you. They may still have one site, which is fine, maybe that's their choice, but I like speaking to you. You're a big part of your success, I know, comes down to your enthusiasm around sales, because 9 years on, you're like, I love sales. I love speaking to people. I love helping people. If you came on here and you're like, I don't like it at all, I don't like speaking to people, I imagine you wouldn't have free facilities.
It trickles down. So I think I would like to think that the infectious energy I have towards sales trickles down to the whole team. So I do a lot of sales training because, again, I enjoy that and I feel like I can have a lot of impact in that area. So I won't, man the front desk and try and make some sales there. I'll make a call because I can do that from anywhere. But what I will do is bring all of our front desk staff. We have a full team. It's not like the coach checks people in or anything. We have a full front desk team,
How many
a cleaning
team members do you
team.
have, by the way?
About 45, 50 across the 2 branches. So about 25 coaches. And then we have marketing, admin. We actually have a new sales manager that we've just hired. So that will definitely take some of the Thai language ones away from some of the other team that are making the calls. Cleaning staff, and then we call them so front desk. We actually changed the name. Part of a whole shift that we did a few years in to try and up the standards was we changed front desk to customer service and operations. So they do messages, they do some emails, the basic inquiries, and then they check people in, they deliver the customer service in the branch. And it was interesting, that sort of mindset shift to being like front desk, like a warm body just on the front desk. It's a customer service and operations. And so with that shift, we started doing more training, more kind of like dinners out with the team and like team building stuff. With the training, a good hour of my day is spent with our maybe 8 or 9 front desk staff, doing role plays, training, trying to get them to sort of feel some of my infectious energy. Another big one is sharing success stories with the whole team. So again, I want them to feel the same as me, that they have an obligation when someone walks in to get them started. Not like, I have a certain target to hit, or, Jack will be happy if I sell something. It's more like, wow, I want to get this person started. Because Joey, he's been training us for 3 months, and Jack told me the other day that, his health markers are much better and his doctor's super happy and he feels much better and he's sleeping better. So sharing those success stories with the whole team, I think has really, really helped get that right mindset. I want everyone to feel good about sales.
Yeah, what you mentioned about the testimonials, I do a very similar thing with the FMA team, where we show success stories and reviews and just talk about those. And there's one that stands out where it was a guy that said, I was having sleepless nights because I didn't know where my customers were coming from, and it was detrimental to the business, and I wasn't sure what to do. And now everything's like, I'm now at peace because I know I've got the processes in place. And it's like, when you're having a conversation with someone, you're maybe one question away from getting them to take a step that's going to change their life. And it's the same for the gym, right?
Yeah.
It's let's say there's an objection. You're one question away from potentially that person deciding to make a decision that's going to positively change their life. So it's encouragement, and you're showcasing what can happen when you do kind of look to go a little bit further in terms of challenging their belief process.
I think you have a similar obligation because you're helping business owners. And when a gym fails, it's someone's dream down the drain, maybe their life savings. And I've spoken to a lot of these gym owners over the years. I mean, I do consultancy, and I've also done a bit of kind of free consultancies to people I know who are really, really struggling. And it's horrible, just like being 40 kg overweight is not much fun. Losing everything you have on a gym is not much fun. So you guys need to feel that same obligation as well. I recently interviewed, I think I missed out as part of my journey. I have a podcast as well, Fitness Business Asia.
Fellow podcaster.
Yeah, yes. we're at 300 episodes almost.
Oh, wow,
in a couple of weeks we'll hit 300. And a few weeks ago I interviewed someone who basically takes sales calls, and he does those for gyms but other industries as well. And he said there was a gym owner in Singapore who was suicidal. He was about to lose everything. He was leveraged, loans out and everything else, really depressed, really down. And he said he helped him, gave him a little bit of special price because he pretty much had no money, really wanted to help him out, turned his business around. Now he's actually shifted into becoming like a franchise, I think. He's doing really well. And you could argue that he kind of saved his life. And if he had this whole, I'll let him make his mind up, here's our programs, here's our packages, let me know when you're ready. The end result could have been devastating, right? And I think we need to, again, feel this more in all sorts of industries.
100%, because it's not just fitness, or it's not just lead generation and sales. It's literally potentially changing someone's life for the better, where they can be more, impact more people, be more fulfilled, provide for their family more, show up more as a parent, and all those benefits are actually the same if someone changes their fitness routine as well. They can, impact more people around them. Their relationships can be better. They can feel more fulfilled just from, having a health transformation. I've seen it so many times. I'm sure you have as well, right? Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah. Well, when you see it, it makes it easier, right? Because again, you can, and I feel like I let that client down, the one that only stayed for a few weeks, but we have so many that we completely changed their lives, and it just makes it much easier. And so share that with the whole team, get them inspired on it, and it should make them feel better about it.
Where do you've got really, really great energy, and some business owners, they can have bursts of good energy and low motivation. As an entrepreneur, and you've got a team of 45 people. As an entrepreneur, how do you ensure that you're consistently performing at your best?
It is hard sometimes. I think over the years, I've built up a certain kind of resilience, so that even if I'm not feeling that great, I've realized that when I walk through the door of base, or whether I walk in, I felt great today, but when I walk into a podcast studio, I do a good job, and I feel a responsibility to the team, to the clients, and everyone else that I kind of need to do that. And it almost becomes this like positive, self-fulfilling prophecy. And I didn't do that years ago as a fitness manager. I don't think I did that. I think I wore my heart on my sleeve a little bit more. I think I was just a little bit more emotional as a manager.
Yeah.
I certainly was in the first few years of base. And then you start to see like the knock-on negative effect that can have. And it just, over time, gives you this air of professionalism, I think. Because I know if I walk into base in a bad mood, it affects everyone on the team, right?
Yeah.
And that's no good. And I don't want that to happen. And I so don't want that to happen that something inside me just kicks in. And then after 5 minutes of sort of acting fine, or even like less than that, I kind of feel good anyway.
Yeah.
I really feel as a coach, actually, but also as a business owner, every interaction I have with anyone on the team needs to be a net positive, right? Even if I'm giving them a warning for being late or something like that, at the end of it, they should still be like, that doesn't feel great, but Jack was fair. And I feel good now moving forwards, knowing what I need to do.
Yeah.
And I know that if I'm on time for the next 3 months, it's going to be done. And they still feel positive, and they still feel like it was handled sort of fairly. Even little things when I walk through the door, like making sure I make eye contact with all the team, saying a quick hello, I think is important. I want everyone to think, yeah, Jack's in a good mood. The spirits of the branch is lifted a little bit. And so for coaches, it's almost like a value of base now. I love it when I bring in a coach who does the same. They walk through the door and just the spirits just raise a little bit, maybe 0.1%,
Yeah.
but the whole place feels a little bit better rather than, just it drops the energy a little bit. And so as a business owner, if you're doing that, honestly, you're probably not going to last very long. People aren't going to hang around.
So if you came in a bad mood, or you're not in a good mood, that can affect the team negatively. But if you show up in a positive light, that's going to affect the team positively, essentially.
Yeah, and even if you're in a bad mood, they might notice sometimes, right, that you're not quite focused, but just making sure that everyone knows, like, it's not because of them, right? Like, I think if everyone's sort of training and I'm sort of stomping around, they're going to be like, why is Jack like that? So it doesn't necessarily, it's like unicorns and rainbows and skipping through the club, but just, make sure that you kind of check in with everyone. They might see that you're a bit preoccupied or something like that, but you're not bringing the energy down at all, right? I think that's crucial. It almost becomes like an evolutionary thing because you start to see over time, especially when you have 3 branches, that if you don't do that, you start to notice the negative knock-on effect it has, and it kind of keeps you in check. And you also notice that if you go in and you're generally a net positive every single time you step through the branch, you kind of notice the knock-on positive effect that has. Retention rates get better. You have better influence for your team. You can positively impact them more. So it almost becomes this weird kind of evolutionary thing that it kind of, over time, by seeing the negative or positive effects of certain actions, it forces you to do the right thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. Let's flip to marketing. What sort of marketing does the business do on a weekly, monthly basis?
Yeah, we do a lot on SEO, and kind of we invested in that early on. Just, a whole load of articles, backlinks through PR. So most of our leads actually come through organic SEO. We do the same for like organic Instagram marketing. So we do it was more of a COVID thing. We had like a podcast, for example. We do Instagram lives with interviews. We, if we have a big event, we'll always get like a videographer in to try and, organically show what we do in the gym. Success stories is another big one. We started doing video success stories, which have been great.
Or just run those as content or boosting those out as ads? Or
So both, yeah. We did so well organically that we didn't spend much on ads for a while, but we have shifted back to spending more on ads. So we're boosting out the testimonials and just try and get more leads through paid ads. So that's been a recent shift that we want to focus a little bit more on as well.
With SEO, obviously you're in a super high population area, right? So you're going to have a lot of people Googling you, which is why it's probably so successful versus someone maybe in a lighter demographic. But it's still, and it baffles me actually in 2025, the amount of gym owners don't actually have like even a website or a proper functioning website, because I know some that are established, have a good client base, and they don't even have a website. So you Google them and you won't show up anywhere.
Wow, okay.
Or number 2, they might have a website, but maybe it's a landing page and it's just on a bio and it's not.
It doesn't really show up well on
Google.
Yeah.
Or it might be like a free Wix, which if you do it well enough, but what they've done is they've just done it themselves to try and save money essentially. But if you're not showing up on Google, I think that's a real trust issue.
100%. Yeah. So we invested early in this. We kind of bootstrapped it a little bit. I did bring in some investors at the beginning of Base, but I put everything I had into it. I mean, that's a whole other story. But I borrowed money, maxed out a ton of credit cards so that I can actually make Base happen. So we had to be really careful with money. I'm really glad I invested into a website and also into getting a proper brand done. So it was actually a Bristol agency that did it. It was a good friend of mine. It was definitely expensive for me at the time, even though he gave like a big discount to make it happen. And I'm so glad we invested into that area. 2 big things: a good functioning website that we could also adapt. 9 years later, we have made some tweaks and adjustments. We basically have the same WordPress website that works great, and we built up a lot of good SEO around that. Also, the ability and function to pay online has been massive for us.
Yeah.
Absolutely huge.
And so is that for the classes or PT or both?
Everything.
Okay,
Yes, you can buy all of our products. If we have an event, you can buy tickets online, and you just put in your credit card details. We have like a payment gateway, and that has been absolutely massive for us. You know, we try not, I mean, it's another whole other topic really. We try not to really have any discounts or promotions. We don't really do it. We have done in the past. We've done it through some difficult times during COVID when we needed cash in, but generally now, no discounts. But say we do a promotion or we do a program, it finishes at midnight, right? So to get, let's say, an early bird rate for a High Rocks program we had recently, right? 12 weeks to High Rocks. It finishes, I don't know, 7th of February, let's say, at midnight. It's really fascinating. You get people by 10:30, 11:15, 11:58, because the code expires at midnight. So they're literally there at home, like, shall I, shan't I, shall I, shan't I? And just as it comes to midnight, they buy it. Would that person buy otherwise? I don't think so.
And so you'll email the list essentially saying like, oh, there's an offer on, or
email marketing is huge for us. Yeah, I forgot to mention that. So we have a really healthy email list of anyone who's ever inquired or people who've joined our gym before.
How often are you emailing the list?
Every week.
Yeah,
every
amazing.
single week. Yeah. So it'd always be, we try and offer some value, right? So a blog post or a video or something like that. You know, an event that we've got going on, maybe some kind of like refer a friend promo or something like that. It's kind of a mix of value and having some kind of promotion or incentive to bring people in. That's been huge for us. If we can fill up events or programs like the 12 weeks to High Rocks, got a whole ton of people joining that, you know, partly through email marketing. So all the people that have joined us in the past, you know, we let them know. And again, the midnight thing is so huge because I think what's going to make them make that decision, right? If it's just this open-ended thing, you know, we have a program starting on this day, they might not do it. But when there's that time limit 3 weeks before, when they get a slightly better price, like an early bird price, it kind of forces people to do it. So I think at the time it cost us about £2,000 to put in that whole sort of payment gateway and everything else, which was quite a lot of money to us at the time. I mean, it's made us many, many, many more times than that, sort of investing into that part.
Amazing. And just for anyone listening, like if you don't have a website, there's a company we recommend called it Accelerate Website Agency, who because there's some companies that will, one, it's important to have it functional, but two, there's some companies that will charge a lot and it still might not be functional potentially. It could look really flashy, but ultimately if it's not getting the conversions that you want or it's not getting the people signing up, then there's no point having it essentially. So Accelerate Website Agency is who we recommend for our clients. So I'll give them a little mini shout out while we're there. Anything on marketing else to wrap up? So did you say you do advertise? Are you running ads on Meta?
Yes, we do run paid ads. Yeah, we only ran a few for a while, but we've just put a little bit more back into that. We did Google AdWords for a while. We invested every month into that, but we rank so well organically that we just stopped doing Google AdWords.
Would you say marketing is kind of always on within the business? There's always
100%. Yeah. It's a, you know, I've stepped away from the coaching, you know, anything really in the branch, but I'm still quite involved in the marketing. I find it, I enjoy it. You know, it's something that I think I can have a lot of impact with.
I was having this conversation with Ben on the way back from Performex yesterday, and he was basically saying that like he just got himself into a position where he could just focus on selling and marketing basically because that's what grew the business. Is that the similar situation for you?
Yeah, it's probably similar thing, right? So I guess it comes back to that. How can I have as much impact as possible? So I don't really coach anymore, but if I do, I'll coach the event that we have with 50 people, right?
Yeah.
Because I feel like I can connect with a lot of people. Or, you know, a busy Saturday morning, I'd be more inclined, okay, I'll go and coach that one because I get to see a whole ton of people and I feel like I can kind of have more impact. So it just sort of feels more like worth an hour of my time. Sales, as we've already discussed, I feel like that. And also marketing as well. We do have a marketing team, but, you know, every week we'll get together and we'll like float ideas. You know, and I'll kind of let them run off with a few things that we've talked about. But again, it just feels like worth. I only have a certain amount of hours I can put in a week. I want to make those as impactful as possible.
Yeah, amazing. So I'm just thinking, is there anything else we need to cover on the gym before we move on to the fit guy? We've done
a lot, right?
One thing I did want to ask actually is the teams. Had 45 team members.
About that, yeah, for the whole company.
How do you organize 45 people? Make sure because some people who are listening to this have a team of 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe more. They must be thinking 45. Wow, that must be difficult to manage. Like, what does your organizational chart look like? How do you manage those people? How do you make sure that everyone's happy and performing at their best?
Yeah, it's just, and again, this was really trial and error. You know, we didn't get this right at all in the beginning, but it's just having, you know, the right people in the higher positions, and over time you kind of recognize what that kind of person is and what they look like, and maybe who as a customer service and operations or front desk as we used to call them, you know, who might be ready for that step up into branch manager. But you just have that structure where I get bothered the least, but the managers can largely look after their teams. So on the fitness side, we have Jeff, who's fitness manager. So if a coach is not happy about something, or thinks that there should be a new class format, or they want to get some new equipment, like that just all goes to Jeff, right? So like he deals with that, and I know he's good at what he does, and I can kind of leave him with that. And if he's like, oh, I'm not sure what to do, or this piece of equipment costs $1,000, can we do it? I would sign that off. But that kind of keeps that part sort of taken care of. Cover for classes, things like that. On the front desk, we had 2 branch managers, so they would take care of the front desk customer service and operations team. And again, if there's anything they don't know what to do, they can ask me if they need to. We now have a sales and service manager, so that puts someone in between me and the branch managers. So if there's something sales and service related, before it comes to me, it would come to someone else. We've had a really good sort of year at base, been growing back since COVID, so we can now invest in a few more areas. So I just want to try and make sure that I'm bothered as little as possible. And then when I do things such as, I'll do the coach meeting every month, I'll do the front desk meeting, I'll be there for that CSO meeting. But yeah, when I do get bothered, let's say, it's by something important, and when I do step into the business, it's to do something that's very impactful. We actually have a senior customer service and operations, so they actually sit between the standard customer service operations and the branch manager. So there's like these kind of chains of command that if you don't know what to do, you ask this person. If they don't know what to do, they ask the branch manager. If they don't know what to do, they ask the sales and service manager, if it's sales and service, and then finally it comes to me. And so with that system, I get bothered really not that much, and it's usually a quick WhatsApp message. A customer wants this, can we do it? He wants an extension. No, we can't. Yes, we can. If it really does get that far. But again, and then it does also go back to systems as well. So they have a lot of flexibility. Let's use that particular example. They have a lot of flexibility of what they can do in terms of extensions. So, this client didn't let us know, but they've got a medical certificate and they've been injured. You don't need to bother me. You can just do it. But then if it really goes beyond that and it's a really good client and it kind of goes beyond our systems, they might want to ask me just for that final authorization. But it's just building those layers in so that I don't get bothered, so I can come to the UK for a week and do this podcast and everything works, right? Yeah.
Amazing. Well,
and just one more thing to that. So let's say there is something like now that I'm not there, I just say, look, do whatever you think's right and we'll talk about it afterwards. And 90% of the time, if it goes beyond the systems, 90% of the time it's totally fine.
So you'll let people make a bit of a gut call on something.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if there is a mistake, you'll address it, but you'll let them go and make that mistake potentially. You got trust in them to make the mistake.
Yeah, we try and give as much flexibility as possible. Honestly, with customer service and operations, you can't give much flexibility. It just makes it harder for them. They don't know what to do. They feel really bad if they kind of get it wrong.
It's better if the system is more rigid within that situation.
The lower down the organizational chart you get, the more rigid you have to be, unfortunately. Because as soon as you start giving flexibility, it confuses things a lot.
Then it's no longer a system, it's just lots of mess.
Well, yeah, then
lots
it's like do something like this, things. Right? Or with the coaches, right? It's not a system. If it's, this is an S&C class, do something that's strength and conditioning related, that's not really a system, right?
So people that are, let's say, more junior or less, or just or lower down on that organizational chart, they need to have more systems, maybe more rigid systems. More rigid systems, like this is what you do. But then as you go higher and you're more senior, you've got more opportunity to make more decisions, essentially.
100%, yeah. So customer service and operations have this much. And when it goes to branch managers, they can actually make most decisions that don't affect me, like a refund for a package or an extension of, for an injury and they didn't tell us or something like that. Like they can make those decisions. And then if it really goes beyond that, they ask me. And if I'm not available, do what you think's right and we'll sort it out afterwards. And I can't really remember a time when they've done something. I was like, what the hell are you doing? Yeah. It doesn't really happen. Because the worst case is, we lose a little bit of money or something like that. And it's a learning process, right? Yeah. And that's how it should be approached. Like, not like, why the hell did you do that? It's like, look, why did you do it that way? Okay, I think next time we better to do it this way. Explain why. See it as a learning thing. And even if we've lost money, it's usually a stronger lesson for everyone. But I think it's important not to ever have a go at them. Especially if I've said, if I'm not there, make your own decision and we'll talk about it afterwards. I can't then say, why the hell did you do that? I have to then support their decision. But obviously, if it wasn't the right one, kind of explain why and help them sort of make a better decision next time.
Yeah, amazing. Well, look, I think I want to move now into the fit guy, but I think what I want to do is end this as part 1, and then we're going to move into part 2 because we've done the gym. Sure. And there's so much there, by the way. I've loved listening to this.
Yeah, it's been fun.
But now we're going to dive into part 2 if that's all cool.
Awesome.
Okay, perfect.